Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to Anne-Marie and the St. John's Board of Trade for hosting this special event for the second year in a row. When we gathered last year, I was certainly proud of the progress we were making in Newfoundland and Labrador. But over the last year, we've made even more progress as a province, from healthcare to childcare, housing, and developing new industries. So I'm even more proud and humbled to stand here as your Premier today in front of a room full of leaders, change makers, and doers. My friends, whether it's the weight of the global news, political strife around the world, or economic struggles abroad, being an optimist is one of the hardest jobs these days. In the face of this global complexity, the requirement for that job comes down to one task: believe in the energy generated from change, and let that be what keeps you pushing forward. For me, I've always measured it against the question I ask myself every single day. Is the province a better place than it was 3 years ago? Is it a better place to live than it was 2 decades ago? Now, I don't always answer those questions because the answer, I believe, is yes. But to say yes is to imply that the work is done. And my friends, it is not. Though we are taking steps towards it every day in building a modern Newfoundland and Labrador to meet the demands of a modern global economy. I've always been restless. I notice my dad is in the audience today. I'm extra nervous too, but he can tell you, I've always been restless. I feel I'm at my best when I'm moving. And I want everyone in this room and in this province to move with me. I mirror that desire in everything I do as Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, to keep going, to keep building, to keep changing, keep inspiring, and to be inspired by. To not languish in the province we are, but to keep progressing towards the province we can be, the province we will be. This isn't blind optimism. This is the belief that the right plan can keep us on the right path forward. And that's the goal I'm working towards every single day. It informs every single decision I make. And it's why my team and I keep putting in the work. And I know it's why each and every one of you in your respective businesses keep putting in that hard work as well. It's too easy to get bogged down in the negativity. And we all know, for years, the naysayers have written this place off. Too much debt, too few opportunities, too far gone to ever come back. But we've pushed through that, pushed through those opinions and jabs like the thick fog off our Grand Banks. The truth is that in the face of a grim economic forecast and a pandemic that changed the world, there has been momentum in this province, and it is building. It took a lot of pushing, it took a lot of sacrifices, but this mighty rock rumbles forward. And that's the thing about momentum. It only continues and increases as long as we keep pushing, as long as we keep putting in the work, and we have. There's been many statistics and metrics given recently about the economic situation in Newfoundland and Labrador. But the one that stands out to me the most has to do with unemployment. For years, growing up, the words record unemployment have dogged Newfoundland and Labrador. Countless people without jobs, forced to leave our beautiful province. Well, it's a different story here today. One that hasn't been seen or heard since Confederation itself. Our province has some of the lowest unemployment rates in close to 50 years. Now, everyone in this room can take some credit for making that happen. It's your businesses, it's your realities that have helped change that statistic. Our geography, once a barrier, is not much of a consideration anymore. No one asks, "Where are you?" Today, they only ask, "What can you do?" And there's so much more we can do, so much more that we will do. I recognize that with that statistic of low unemployment is a good indicator for the economy, but it also presents unique challenges for businesses with respect to recruitment and retention of staff. That's where our holistic approach to economic improvement comes in. Out-migration is becoming less and less of a reality. We just went to Fort McMurray to host a special job fair. Over 200 people came out in Alberta to hear our message. It's time to come home. People are starting to catch on to what we've all known here all along, that Newfoundland and Labrador is the absolute best place to live, work, and raise a family. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are now seeking out the opportunities here at home. And given the new industries that we've seen develop and the long-standing ones being reimagined, our momentum is reflected in something else we haven't seen here before: true and sustained population growth. Again, for the first time in over 50 years, we've seen the largest sustained population growth in our province. We've also experienced record high immigration, with over 7,000 newcomers calling this place their new home. We're making sure that everyone in our province has an equal opportunity to be a part of our workforce. That's why one of the first things I did was we brought in $25 childcare just months after becoming Premier, bringing it down from, at the time, $40 a day. Now, with the federal government coming on board, I'm proud to say that we have over 8,000 children in $10 a day childcare spaces across our province. And we're not stopping there. We are continuing to add more spaces because affordable childcare is huge. It gives more opportunities for people to work while also relieving them of the high cost of childcare for your employees. We've all seen how the housing crisis has become both a provincial and a national concern, and there's no shaking it. That's why last week I announced our Newfoundland and Labrador 5-point plan to help make housing more affordable throughout our province. Because even though we're here today in St. John's, it's not just a St. John's problem. It's a problem on the West Coast, it's a problem in Central, and it's a problem in Labrador as well. Our plan will invest over $65 million towards stimulating private sector housing development and stabilizing, or hopefully reducing, housing prices. The primary objective is to address the growing demand for housing that is affordable, driven by factors like sustained population growth, demographic shifts, and the high cost of living. From the removal of the HST on newly constructed rental housing, potentially saving developers a lot of money, to utilizing government-owned land and buildings for purpose-built rentals, or simply helping you at a basement apartment in your home. These initiatives collectively aim to introduce 500 new housing options into the market to contribute to the province's housing affordability goals. Of course, we're doing all that while continuing to add more social housing, supportive housing, and shelter beds as well. Because a safe place to live is key to a person's overall well-being and success in life. Our government also recognizes that having a progressive and modern province means it is critical to have a healthy workforce with access to health care. modern healthcare. As doctors, my wife Allison and I have seen firsthand the strain on our healthcare system. The pandemic only added to it, and the recovery process has taken an immense effort. The work here has meant addressing our current system while also exploring new ways of delivering healthcare services across our province. Attracting and retaining more doctors and nurses with some of the most competitive incentives and financial packages in the entire country. And making sure that everyone has access to the services they need faster and closer to home. I know it's a big ask. Health transformation is a big ask, but it is an imperative for a modern society. So look at the work that we've done, and it is already showing some results. Of course, nothing can be fast enough, but we are showing results. We now have 19 family care teams either established or underway, and we plan to have 35 in place in the next 3 years. So far, almost 50,000 people have been connected to primary care through family care teams. More and more Newfoundlanders and Labradorians recognize the hope they see building in this place and the many opportunities now springing forward. New opportunities, real opportunities. It's because of the work we've put in. It's because of the work you, the business community, has put in. Because of that work, that unrecoverable fiscal situation of ours is now on the mend and is getting stronger by the day. To make sure it keeps improving, we've established initiatives like the Future Fund Act, which requires the provincial government to invest revenue to strengthen our finances, pay down debt, and lower the cost of borrowing. Approximately $300 million will be in the Future Fund by year end. That, my friends, is a big down payment on a bright future. We are also diversifying the province's investor base and broadening the reach to international markets through such measures as the European Borrowing Program. And then, of course, there's the billion-dollar elephant in the room. I wish it was just $1 billion. Muskrat Falls. But we dug in, and because of our work, because of our hard work, we secured the $5.2 billion deal with the federal government, further lessening the burden on the shoulders of each and every Newfoundlander and Labradorian. Now, I know the momentum we're talking about can be hard to feel by families and households across our province, especially given the challenges posed by the high cost of living coming out of the pandemic. I know this impacts not only your business costs, but also your families and your employees and their families. We've seen it. We feel it too. And my government has responded with more than $500 million in targeted short-term and long-term measures to help. There's the Home Heating Supplement Program, providing up to $500 to eligible residents who use furnace or stove oil to heat their homes. We've eliminated the 15% retail sales tax on home insurance. And there's been a 50% reduction in motor vehicle registration fees. And thanks to the upswing of our oil and gas industry last year, we were able to provide a one-time cost of living check to help Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Looking further down the road, we need to help the current situation while thinking of what's ahead. That's why we have funding for electric vehicle rebates and charging infrastructure, funding to help homes transition from oil to electric heat, and a 15% increase to the income supplement and seniors benefit. For today and for tomorrow, we have lowered the price at the pump by cutting the provincial gas tax in half, saving you more than 8 cents a litre, the second lowest gas tax in the entire country. We did that to help offset the federal government's carbon tax. Of course, we agree with Ottawa on a lot of issues, but the carbon tax is not one. Friends, the carbon tax, the federal carbon tax, just does not make sense right now. There are no options to change. The fundamental premise of this tax is built on options to change. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, right now, they just don't exist. So while well conceived perhaps in 2015, the options have not materialized for people in our province. As a result, it affects your businesses. It impacts your families. Disproportionately, by the way, than any other province in the country not contemplated by our federal government. So I want to tell you that I will continue to make our voice heard loud and clear in Ottawa and to our federal counterparts to ensure that they understand the impact, induced and indirect, by the way, which they haven't contemplated, that this instrument is having on Newfoundland and Labrador. We will continue to be heard, and we will continue to fight for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians when it comes to the carbon tax. Because there are plenty of other ways, frankly, plenty of other instruments to implement to mitigate the impact of climate change. Some of the largest economies in the world aren't using a carbon tax. The United States does not use a carbon tax. You can see innovative ways here in our own economy. You can see it in the decarbonization efforts in our offshore oil and gas already, as one example. We've been working hard with our partners in the oil and gas sector. The industry that has brought sudden prosperity is still and will be continued a valuable partner in our province's future. It's still an important revenue and job generator with the lower carbon, secure supply of ethical oil to meet the global demand. And our industry will continue to be important as we strengthen and build on other industries, as we transition towards a green economy for the future of Newfoundland and Labrador, the future of Canada, and the future of the world. Make no mistake, the impact of climate change is real. The wildfires we've seen this year alone caused us all to take pause. Look at the devastation we all experienced from Hurricane Fiona. If we don't act now, we'll be working towards survival instead of a brighter future. But I believe a measured, balanced approach, one that uses our renewable assets, are that future. We must act now, and Newfoundland and Labrador is doing its part. Green energy. It's something we've been working with and working towards. It's defined by the game-changing possibilities currently being unlocked in harnessing our wind to produce hydrogen, renewable, clean, green energy. And it is endlessly, as we all know too well, abundant and available. And that boom has already resonated as far as Europe and around the world. Global leaders are coming here to get in early on what promises to be a new day for a new form of energy. Now, speaking of a new day, the sun is setting quickly on a bad old day, a bad old deal. While 2041 may feel like a long time away, in utility terms, it is today. Now, when I spoke to you last year, who would have thought that the Premier of Quebec would come here to Newfoundland and Labrador and acknowledge the disparities of the Upper Churchill Falls deal? I am confident in our position, I am confident in our team, and I am confident that while Quebec needs to do a deal, this time it will only be done with the utmost benefits for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We've all been putting in the work across industries. Our fishery has redefined itself with newer products, expanding to wider markets. Our mining sector is booming as of the critical minerals and access to green renewable energy here continues to be in high demand. And our arts and tourism sectors have just recorded one of the busiest seasons in years. My friends, we've made a lot of progress in these last few years, but the job is nowhere near done yet. So I will ask you all this. Let us leave here today with a renewed commitment to keep pushing, to keep the momentum going and growing. Let's all put our hands on it, dig deep, and continue to give it everything we've got. And let's get the word out. Let's talk loud and proud about the Big East and its even bigger potential. Because ours is a history of resilience, a how-to on survival. Facing down adversity is second nature to us, as we've done it for centuries of weathering any storm. Your sweat, your toil, your unwavering commitment to the province and its people serve as a testament to the enduring spirit of this place we love and call home. Every extra mile you put, every extra hour you invest, you help reinforce and build the foundation of the new, modern Newfoundland and Labrador. My government, your government, is behind you, alongside you. So together, let's keep putting in the work. God guard thee, Newfoundland and Labrador. I guess I'm in the hot seat now.
Thank you, Premier. While you were delivering that, I was negotiating time with your team. So I've been here texting feverishly to see how much time do I have? How many questions can I ask?
I'm okay in this question period, by the way.
I think I just got you out of. It feels like I got you out of like school for free here. Yeah, I think I might have done that for you.
Note, right?
Yeah, I think we did that. Thank you for being here today.
Happy to.
I am so excited. Clearly, I told you earlier you were the hottest ticket in the province. I think that is true because we have more than doubled the number of people who attended the first annual State of the Province event last year. So I think that's a testament certainly to people wanting to hear from you and a business community that is very engaged and wants to know what's happening in the province and what the priorities are. So I appreciate you all being here, and I certainly appreciate having the opportunity to sit down with you. A lot's happened in a year.
A lot has.
A lot has.
Still a lot to do.
Yes, I have no doubt. I'm going to launch in, and I'm also going to attempt to take a few questions from the audience as well, depending on when Megan tells me I need to wrap. So I will pay attention to that as well. I'm going to launch right in with a big one, certainly from the St. John's Board of Trade's perspective. And speaking of modernizing Newfoundland and Labrador, you made a wonderful announcement yesterday related to rideshare. So the St. John's Board of Trade, on behalf of our members and many other community partners, certainly thank you for doing that. I just wanted to see if you wanted to just provide people here with an update on why you felt it was time to make a decision like that.
Sure. Well, I mean, to be honest, we thought it was time a couple of years ago. We changed the legislation just slightly to allow towns and municipalities to welcome Uber and rideshare into their communities. It turns out that wasn't enough for some of these businesses, so we wanted to make sure that we were eliminating barriers within the levers that we have available to us as a provincial government to ensure that people had access to these ride-sharing platforms. I mean, it is a bit odd that a city the Northeast Avalon does not have it. When you travel around the world, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of cities who have these ride-sharing platforms, and it was a certainly a gap in our business environment, a gap in our tourism environment, and one that we needed to fill. So in the absence of others not taking action, in the absence of businesses not coming here, we wanted to eliminate any barriers that we had available to us. And that's what we did yesterday, or will be doing in the coming days and weeks in the legislature. And hopefully everybody can start to track their little buggy rides around on their phones in the not too distant future.
Well,
I think it's a very good move. Yeah.
Well, I would wholeheartedly agree with that, and I'm sure most people in the room would as well. So thank you for that. I'm going to launch into housing now. I know you referenced a few minutes ago the plan, the 5-point plan that you released. I think, we've had some conversations, and the Board of Trade has been talking a lot about this and the impact on our community. I think it goes without saying that there's a significant role for the private sector in the delivery of this solution.
Absolutely. I mean, so when this didn't catch us entirely by surprise. The scope and scale may have been a bit more compounded for certain, the war in the Ukraine, et cetera. But we made the largest investment in housing in the province's history in budget 2023. That said, there is an incredible imbalance in the fundamentals of the marketplace right now. There's a mismatch in supply-demand, which to me speaks for incredible opportunity for private equity and business to capitalize on that imbalance and to open up opportunities to grow the housing sector. So I approach housing from two different spaces, and while they may be distinct and compartmentalized, they are related. One is affordable housing that we as a society need to, and we continue to make record investments in to ensure that the most vulnerable people with the most complex needs are being looked after in our society. But then there's housing that's affordable, which speaks to the rising interest rates, the pressures that middle-class families are feeling right now, first-time home buyers. I mean, the interest rates alone have gone from 0.25 to 7.2. I think the steepest increase in the Bank of Canada's history, and so that adds significant pressure to young families and young individuals. So we thought that the 5-point so we carved out money and continue to invest in, and we'll continue to invest more in affordable housing. But we thought the 5-point plan specifically would act as a package of incentives to help developers and private investors. By the way, big and small, one basement apartment opens up a unit for somebody, to change the landscape and allow the market dynamics to shift to meet an equilibrium within that supply-demand space, which of course will then put downward pressure on the individual units and rental prices and housing prices.
Okay. The Board of Trade may convene a discussion on that.
But I'll throw this challenge out to anybody who's here from a municipality lens. We're very blessed to have so many robust municipalities in the Northeast Avalon. The single thing that I've heard the most from developers is the HST portion is really good for them, and it changes some of their business modeling. The red tape at the municipal level is what seems to be the biggest barrier. So we're fortunate that having so many municipalities here, right, in the Northeast Avalon should, and the challenge is, set up a competitive environment for that capital right now to eliminate the red tape, because if there is a first mover advantage, whoever can promise to get this capital through, especially in the uncertainty of fluctuating interest rates, that's where the capital will go. Capital will go where it's loved and it's supported. And if you can eliminate red tape at your own municipal level, then that's important to making sure that we get these incentives working and houses being built.
Challenge accepted. Switching gears a little bit, and I'm going to go a little bit fast here so I can cover.
You can cut
more.
Me off at any time.
No, I would never do that. No. I'm going to switch gears to healthcare. So I know you referenced a few moments ago, and 50,000 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who have access now. We recently hosted Minister Osborne and Dr. Furey for a conversation very much like this, and they shared some plans about modernizing the delivery and improving access. I'm wondering if you would be able to expand a little bit on what improving access will look like and what plans are underway.
So you were asking me a healthcare question. You want it to be short answer?
Well, like
I'm not sure that's
within 2 minutes, and then maybe I will exercise to cut you off.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, I think the pandemic accelerated the changing paradigm that we all had to reflect on and realize is a true reality. The traditional way of practicing medicine in Newfoundland and Labrador, and arguably across Canada, has definitively changed, and it is never going back. The model of care has changed, and it needs to change, and that rate of change has accelerated because of the pandemic. The traditional model of having a family practice doctor graduate and go hang their shingle in Burin or Bonavista or anywhere else, and they're open for business from cradle to grave for everybody at all hours, that is not happening anymore. And the longer that we hold on to that romantic notion of that style of practice of medicine, the harder it's going to be for all of us. That's why we started the Health Accord. And I know what we've all been collectively here familiar with the Health Accord as a concept. But I can tell you from talking to other premiers, they don't have that strategic plan, that fulsome 360 consultation and approach to transformation. If anybody stands on this stage and promises that everybody is going to have a family doctor in the next year or 2 or 3, I would encourage you all to laugh them out of here, because that is just not a real promise. We are working to ensure that everyone has access to primary care, which means that they will have access to a family doctor, but we also need to make sure that we are expanding scope of practice so that people can get primary care in a more untraditional, a more modern way. For example, we changed the way that pharmacies can operate. So pharmacists, if you have an uncomplicated UTI, urinary tract infection right now, you can go into a pharmacist. You don't have to go to the emergency room. You don't have to wait a week to get in to see your family doctor. You can go to a pharmacist, and the pharmacist can prescribe you an antibiotic for your UTI. And there's I think there's 15 or 20 different diagnoses that they can prescribe for. We've changed the scope of practice of nurse practitioners and registered nurses, all of which takes the pressure off that family doctor. So the goal should be access to primary care. Embedded in that is a family doctor and primary care specialist. But knowing that you're rostered to a family care team and that you can have access, regardless if your family doc, by the way, is on vacation or not, that's the model for the future. That's what doctors want. That's what patients want. And it is going to take us some time to set it up. But it is definitively the model for the future, not just in Newfoundland and Labrador, but across Canada. I fully believe that. Mm-hmm. So that is going to take some time. Yeah. That's why the Health Accord was a 10-year approach. So while we're making great strides very quickly, and we will continue to do so, anyone who promises you changes overnight is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay, I think that's a really key point around managing expectations.
Yeah.
And expecting different delivery. I know recruitment is a big part, however, of what delivery is going to look like, whether that's a family doctor or a healthcare team. Can you share an update in terms of how recruitment efforts?
Yeah, so we've put together 2 things on recruitment. 2 of the barriers on recruitment, one was financial, ensuring that we had the right incentive package to get family doctors and nurses into the system. The other was logistic and credentialing. So we were ahead of the country in changing the credentialing at a college level. So what happened a year and a half ago was if you were, believe it or not, if you needed a kidney transplant, we would have to fly you to Ontario. You could go in and get your kidney transplant done by the anesthesiologist and the surgeon and the surgical assist and everything in Ontario. But for them to come practice here, required them to get a copy of their MD, to get it, like it was a 3-month ordeal plus exorbitant fees for them to transfer their license from Ontario to Newfoundland and Labrador. And you expand on that to a world stage, same thing, downtown London. I'm sure if any of us break our ankle walking in London tomorrow, we're not going to have any question about the person who's going to fix us is well qualified and they'll do a good job. But to take that same doc and bring them over here, they needed to pass 2 tests, and an English proficiency test, believe it or not. And then they would have to make sure they had certain references. It was a 3 to 6 month ordeal. So we made sure we streamlined that and working with the college, giving them extra supports to do so. So they can now turn around a Canadian license in 24 to 48 hours and an international license, provided you meet certain thresholds, of course, within 72 hours. A huge change in the landscape of credentialing. The second part is incentives to get people here and to allow them to stay here. We definitively have one of the healthiest incentive and recruitment packages in the entire country. You can, as a doc, you can make multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars just to show up. Just to show up. Then you still get paid on top of all that. But that's the kind of packages that are out there for some of these hard to fill positions. But that's important because right now it's in a competitive workplace. And every doctor, every nurse counts. We need to make sure we're competing with the rest of the country because we're not competing anymore. It used to be that we were St. John's was competing with Grand Falls. That's not the issue anymore. We're competing nationally and internationally. So our recruitment and retention package is quite healthy, and it's already delivered 40 doctors and a couple hundred nurses, and we'll continue to kind of make sure that that's in place for those hard-to-fill positions. I know I'm running out of time, but while changing the fundamental portion of this, it's supply and demand, similar to housing, to ensure that we're educating more. We've expanded the Memorial's Medical School. We've opened up new residency spots because I know, and I think all you know, that for every family doc that retires, we're going to need at least 2 to 3 to replace them. So if we're not training them, how can we expect the end result to be any different?
I think recruitment is really key. I mean, you just referenced what's happening in the healthcare. You referenced a few minutes ago going to Fort McMurray, and I'm sure that was an incredible experience.
That's great. Yeah, a lot of your members were there. Yeah.
Absolutely, they were. A lot of my members also go out into the world every day and recruit, and I think that brings a really interesting situation in the sense of we're out selling Newfoundland and Labrador. And so I would like to hear, I guess, a little bit from your experience in terms of when you're in Fort McMurray or if the team is in India recruiting healthcare workers. What are you saying about Newfoundland and Labrador, and what are you hearing? And I would love to hear what people in Fort McMurray had to say.
Sure, yeah. It's, well, first of all, I think it's really easy in our day-to-day lives to miss the broad new horizons that are available in Newfoundland and Labrador right now that are afforded to very few, if any, other jurisdictions across the country and around the world. And when I meet with people in Fort McMurray, but also when I meet with, federal leaders, international leaders, the Chancellor of Germany, former Prime Minister Tony Blair, everyone without exception looks at me and says, do you guys really understand what you have? Do people there really know what you have? We are the envy of the rest of the country. Many provinces are one industry, two industry, towns and provinces. We are on the verge of a new industrial landscape in Newfoundland and Labrador, which, by the way, owns and celebrates our traditional industries while harnessing new ones. The energy equation for many provinces and jurisdictions is a win-lose. For us, it's a win-win. We have an abundance of lower carbon footprint oil and gas products, which will be important beyond 2050, by the way. No one in that net zero equation suggests that there is no oil and gas beyond 2050. We have an abundance of it, while an abundance of green, clean, renewable energy. We have hydroelectric space. We have wind to hydrogen space. And the ingredients of that wind to hydrogen space can be mimicked and replicated very few other places. We have an abundance of clean water for the electrolysis process. We have an abundance of renewable energy in the wind. We have deep sea ports that are ice-free and have access to the northeastern seaboard and Europe. And we have a workforce, the best workforce in the world, who's used to working in a challenged and transitional marine climate. We've seen in my lifetime people go from the fishery when it was struggling in 1992 after the cod moratorium to oil platforms. And now we'll see them do again, to stay on the oil platforms and pivot again to wind to hydrogen. This is an incredible place. And after all that energy, we have the key critical minerals. So when people are looking around the world, when the Rio Tintos are looking at where to invest, they're looking at where are the critical minerals, where is the green energy, how can I make green steel? You can't make green steel unless you can get it out of the ground and smelt it initially in an environmentally friendly way. There are very few other places in the world that has what Labrador has when it comes to that right now. The purity of the iron, the access to hydroelectric energy, and the heat at which you need to refine it because it's so pure and ease to access it, is second to none. So I know that's a really long-winded answer, but people in Fort Mac didn't appreciate the size and scope of the industrial horizons ahead, whether that's in new industries, investing in old ones, modernizing old ones, or building the new infrastructure that is going to be required for a modern Newfoundland and Labrador. All of that is going to require labor force. And so we need to make sure that we are looking abroad, looking across the country, and investing in our own to make sure that we're creating that labor force for the future. So the message to the people in Fort Mac, and the message to all of you, is that while the day-to-day issues are very important and can be distracting, don't be afraid. In fact, I encourage you all to pick up your head every now and then and look at the horizon, because it is bright and it is prosperous. And the challenge to all of us is to not let that opportunity slip through our fingers.
I think it's a good reminder. We do need to say those things out loud sometimes.
You do.
And remind ourselves. Yeah. I hate to be a downer, but I'm going to bring you back down from that. Sorry. I just want to talk about the costs of things a little bit, because again, business leaders, we're faced with that, and raising a family at home, we're faced with that all the time. So the high cost of living and operating small businesses in particular are felt by most sitting here in the room today. And while there's a lot of positive momentum happening, sometimes the day-to-day just feels hard. And you mentioned that government is using $500 million for short and long-term measures to alleviate some of this pain. And I'm wondering if there's any more that you can share about what you're planning or the conversations that are happening surrounding small businesses in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Sure. So, I mean, we fully recognize that cost of living issues, while beyond the control of the provincial government, have a direct and local and individual and family impact. We completely understand that, and that's why proportionally, more than any other province, we've given more back. We've given per capita more back to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians than any other province in the country. That doesn't fix the fact that when you go to the grocery store, things seem just completely out of whack. Mm-hmm. It is something that we can do to help. We're always looking at ways to help further. So in addition to the $500 million that we've given back, by the way, it's more than that. So it's $500 million in the package, but it's also, we spend about $400 million a year on Muskrat Falls, 200 of which is directly for rate mitigation. So that's money that could be spent to give back to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, or to modernize infrastructure, roads, hospitals, schools. All of that prevents your businesses from their electricity rates from doubling. So we continue to look at new ways to help. We've always been responsive, and we're quite grateful for the leadership in the St. John's Board of Trade and in this room by bringing to our attention things like the HAPSET measure that we recognized and acted on in the last budget process. We're always open to suggestions about how to make small and medium businesses more sustainable given the pressures that exist. But we also really want to make sure that you all understand that we are different. We are distinguished differently than the federal government when it comes to the price on carbon. Because whether or not you know it or not, the induced and indirect cost of the carbon tax trickles down to your businesses and to the products that you supply to people around the province. The federal government claims that they are giving all of that back. They're rebating all of that. They openly admit that there's been no contemplation for the indirect and induced cost of the carbon tax on goods and services in Newfoundland and Labrador. So while they've made the calculation based on what they think you're putting in your car every month, and that's fair. But what's not fair is to not contemplate the induced and indirect costs of goods and services in a geography that is Newfoundland and Labrador. Things have to get here. If you're going to eat an apple, it has to be grown in Georgia or somewhere sunnier than here. It has to get put on a transport truck. It comes up through New Brunswick, pays a carbon tax. Then it gets on a diesel-powered ferry, pays a carbon tax. And then it gets on another transport truck, or the same one, and they fill up somewhere in Newfoundland and Labrador, another carbon tax. That's all additive. to the people, to the products that we purchase and buy. That's why it's not the right instrument right now. And that's not even to speak of the clean fuel standards, which was implemented despite our aggressive arguing with the federal environment minister, who just does not understand Newfoundland and Labrador.
So if you need help with that, you know where we are.
Yeah, use all the help we can get.
Yeah, you can, we can absolutely.
And by the way, it's just because I can hear the critics already, this is not to say that climate change is not real, and to suggest that I would think and make this argument based on the environmental imperative is completely false, and creating a false dichotomy of forced choice in Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are smarter than that. They know that there's other options. And all you have to do is tilt your head to the south to know that there are carrots available that can move the policy cycle that Joe Biden and President Biden have implemented. It does not have to be a stick. The options to change just aren't there for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So to suggest that this position would be one that is climate denying or climate change denying is myopic and insulting and simplistic, and no one in this room should feel compelled to believe that argument.
Okay, so we will talk further on that one perhaps, because I think you would have many allies in the room on that one. I am out of time now.
Oh, shucks.
I know, but I have one more. It feels to me, and I would be remiss if I let you get up without asking this. Are we having an election?
Well, I thought that's why we were all gathered here today. No, look, I think it's normal when there's a leadership race for there to be speculation on timing of an election period. But I am principally and primarily focused on delivering results for people in Newfoundland and Labrador right now. And the election has not even entered my thought process. It's firmly focused. I can tell you there's all kinds of rumors. I heard my dad tell it, the priest said it today on Sunday. There's going to be an election. Are you calling an election? We're not calling an election anytime soon. We're primarily focused on delivering results for people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think that's just the opposition having some fun with trying to speculate on the future political landscape.
Well, I thank you for answering that. That's it. I think between your speech and me prioritizing my questions very quickly, I think you got through a lot. So I thank you again for your time and your honesty and your willingness to sit here once again this year. Thank you to Walmart Canada for sponsoring this event and being our partner. And thank you to all of you for continuing to support the Board of Trade, for responding every time we send out an event and say, hey, want to do this with us? And you all say, yes, we do, and you come. So thank you very much for that. Have a lovely afternoon, and I look forward to seeing...
If you keep me here for 10 more minutes, I miss a question.
I know. I've been getting all the warnings. I know this. Well, I'm a very good friend of yours. I don't know.
I can assure you they'll be more aggressive in 10 minutes or whatever.
Yes, they will. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us.